It was the evening of April 18, 1912, around 9:30 p.m. in New York, America. Amid heavy downpour, about 400 people were anxiously waiting for someone. This was that dark night when a flood of grief was about to descend on New York. For 3 days, these people had been waiting for a ship named Carpathia. This ship returned carrying a heartbreaking story that still sends shivers down people's spines today. A ship that was considered unsinkable. The RMS Titanic, which swallowed hundreds of lives in the ocean. And aboard the Carpathia were those select few who had witnessed the terrifying fury of the Titanic with their own eyes. This was that heart-wrenching event in history that no one can ever forget. The incident left behind many mysteries. On April 10, 1912, when the Titanic was about to depart from Southampton in Britain for New York on its maiden voyage, the atmosphere there was extraordinary. People had heard so much about the Titanic that crowds gathered to behold its grandeur and beauty. It is said that more than 100,000 people came to see the magnificence of the Titanic, and such a huge crowd was natural because the Titanic was truly magnificent. As grand as the ship appeared from the outside, it was even more luxurious inside. The Titanic was an extremely luxurious vessel with facilities like 2 grand staircases, a heated swimming pool, gymnasium, 4 restaurants, library, Turkish baths, electric baths, and a barber shop. It was as if the Titanic was a floating luxury hotel with every possible amenity available. The uniqueness of the Titanic was not limited to its luxury. Its safety features also made it special. At that time, the Titanic was considered the world's largest, safest, and strongest ship. It was designed in such a way that it was called unsinkable. And truthfully, the Titanic was indeed a ship that was thought impossible to sink, because it was built in a special manner. It used a double-bottom hull in its construction. The hull is the outer covering of the ship that provides strength. Due to the Titanic's double-bottom hull, even if the lower hull was damaged in a collision, the second hull would keep the ship safe and prevent it from sinking. Another safety feature made the Titanic even more secure. The Titanic was divided into 16 watertight compartments. This lower part of the ship stays underwater. If there was a hole anywhere in this section, water would gradually fill inside and eventually the ship would sink. But the Titanic's lower section was divided into 16 separate watertight compartments. The advantage was that if the ship collided with a rock and leaked, only the damaged compartment would fill with water, while the others remained safe. This way, the ship could be saved from sinking. The Titanic was so large that even if 4 of its 16 compartments filled with water, it would not sink, and it was nearly impossible for more than 4 compartments to be damaged at once, because the compartments were very large. No rock could sink this ship. This is why the Titanic was called the unsinkable ship. The White Star Line Company built the Titanic over about 3 years. By April 2, 1912, construction was complete, and a few days later, on April 10, 1912, it was prepared for its maiden voyage. Aboard were prominent people of the era, along with immigrants heading to America to start a new life. The captain was 62-year-old Edward John Smith, an experienced captain. It was believed this would be his final voyage before retirement. There were approximately 2,224 passengers and crew members aboard the Titanic. Typically, the journey from Southampton to New York took 7 to 8 days. But the Titanic was the fastest ship of its time, and the White Star Line wanted it to reach New York in 6 days, so it could make headlines for its grandeur, size, and speed. That's why the company instructed Captain Smith to run the ship at full speed. The Titanic was new, and its safety testing and trials were not fully complete, yet it was sending it on a long voyage, and one major reason was business pressure. The White Star Line had another ship, the Olympic, which looked similar to the Titanic but was slightly smaller, called its sister ship. In March 1912, the Olympic had technical issues and was brought to port for emergency repairs, which could take months and halt the company's business. To keep operations running, they decided to launch the new Titanic in April. Since it was the maiden voyage, experienced crew were essential. Some existing crew were replaced with experienced ones from the Olympic. One officer, David Blair, was removed and replaced by an Olympic officer. As David Blair left for home, he mistakenly took the locker key with him. Unfortunately, the only binoculars on the Titanic were locked in that locker. This small mistake by David Blair played a key role in the Titanic's destruction later. Finally, the moment arrived when, on April 10, 1912, the Titanic set off on its historic maiden voyage. Captain Smith knew well that in these months the sea had many icebergs. Sensing danger, he avoided the direct northern route and chose a slightly longer southern route. Icebergs are small floating ice mountains that break off glaciers and drift with waves into the open sea. Captain Smith chose a route with minimal risk of iceberg collision to avoid danger. At that time, no advanced technology existed to spot icebergs, so a high lookout point called the Crow's Nest had 1 or 2 crew members with binoculars constantly scanning for obstacles. Ships communicated via wireless radio, sharing information about hazards. When the Titanic had completed half its journey, it received the first iceberg warning from the ship Coronia about a day away. Senior officer Jack Phillips operated the wireless and informed the captain. On this maiden voyage, Titanic owner J. Bruce Ismay was aboard. When Captain Smith told Ismay about the warnings, he dismissed them, believing icebergs were common and the ship unsinkable. He didn't want speed reduced, delaying arrival. The Titanic received 6 more iceberg warnings, the last from the Californian. It was night, no moon, very low visibility. The Crow's Nest crew had no binoculars. The Titanic was at full speed, about 22 knots, with the iceberg just hours away. In dense darkness, slicing through waves, the Titanic advanced, ignoring the massive ice mountain ahead. By 11:30 p.m., the Titanic was only miles from the iceberg. At its speed, collision was minutes away. 2 brave crew members, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, despite the freezing cold and darkness, kept watch. Cold winds caused tears, blurring vision. No binoculars. At 11:39 p.m., Frederick Fleet spotted the iceberg. He rang the bell 3 times urgently, phoned the bridge, iceberg right ahead, ordered hard turn to port. First Officer William Murdoch acted immediately. Reversed engines, hard turn left, but too late. High speed and size made stopping or turning impossible quickly. They avoided head-on, but at 11:40 p.m., the starboard side scraped the iceberg. The impact shook everyone aboard. Unfortunately, the Titanic's double-bottom hull was of no use because the impact from the iceberg occurred on the side of the ship where there was only a single layer.